Hi, my name's David Joel, President of the Hampshire Chamber of Commerce, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the role of the director in leading an organisation in crisis. Now, most of what we've been doing to date has been around trying to look after the practicalities of keeping the business running, but there is a serious leadership role that the directors or leaders of a business need to execute. One of the dirty little secrets that nobody ever tells you as a director is that you're on the hook for leading the organisation. And in times of crisis, the role of leadership changes. We're really now about trying to contain the crisis. We're trying to make sure we can live to fight another day. Of course, we have to focus on the practicalities like cash flow and all that stuff. You know, if it's a bit like a human being when it's seriously injured, if you don't stop the bleeding, the patient dies. In your business sense, if we don't get cash under control, then clearly the business will die. Some say the cash is the lifeblood of the business. But once you've got that stable, you've effectively done the triage on the business, what next? We've got to start to plan and lead the organisation back to better times, really. So there are a number of skills and characteristics you need as a business leader in times of crisis. You've got to have great communication skills. You communicate, and then you communicate some more. The second thing is you've got to have a real clear view of where the organisation needs to go. So clarity of vision and values. So your vision is where you want to be. The values is how you behave in order to get there. And tied to that values piece is about having empathy, caring relationships with your staff, with your colleagues, with your suppliers, with your customers, is what's going to get you through the crisis. The role of the board and its leadership in crisis changes. It moves from business as usual to one of containment. Gene Clan, in his book Crisis Leadership, describes crises in three levels. There's a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. Level 1 is a crisis where your values may be under threat, your vision may be compromised, but nobody's going to die. You may be embarrassed as an organisation, but you have to deal with it. It has reputational issues. A level 2 has all of the elements of level 1, plus you may have loss of property and potential loss of life. The most severe is a level 3. Level 3 is where there will be loss of life, there will be loss of property, and even the existence of the organisation may be under threat. Where we sit at the moment in COVID-19, I think most organisations, unless you're really lucky, are vacillating somewhere between a level 2 and a level 3 crisis. The current crisis situation for most of us has rocked our world. Of course, we've all had a go at planning for crises, crisis management plans, risk registers. But I'll guarantee you, if any of you look back after this, not one of you saw on your risk register a global pandemic as being something that you're going to have to deal with. So the board has to change pace in times of crisis. And we're into the world of trying to match your activity with the rate at which the crisis is unfolding. And there may be other crises that emerge as part of this. So running with a crisis is uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable because we're dealing with uncertainty. And in any world where things are uncertain, it's impossible to plan for. As boards, we have to reprioritise what's important. It's about containing the crisis and getting the business to fight another day. It means we have to understand our stakeholders, and that could be our shareholders, our customers, our suppliers. What are their needs? How are their needs tied to ours? These are all interconnected things and difficult to think about. It is an uncomfortable place, but we make choices in crisis, how we're going to deal with it. The Vikings have an interesting mantra which served them pretty well at the height of their civilization. And if you translate it from their original language, the mantra they use is, you can run and die tired, or you can stand and fight. In a crisis, the board has to stand and fight. That's the choice that we have to make. A few years ago, the consulting firm Deloitte tried to characterise what boards and directors should do in times of crisis. And they broke this down into 5 fundamental steps. And I'm going to just walk through those now and explore what they mean. Step 1 in the Deloitte's list of things that directors should do in crisis is to have decisive leadership. In crisis, time is your enemy. You never have enough time. You're dealing with uncertainty. You never have enough information. That means that you're going to make mistakes. Mistakes will occur. Learn from those mistakes. They help inform your decisions next time around. As we learn from those mistakes, the confidence in your decision-making ability improves. What we cannot do is fall into the trap of saying, I haven't got enough information or enough data to make a decision. We have to decide and move forward. The second step in the Deloitte's approach is active communication. That means being proactive, not just responding to requests for data. So we need to prioritise our stakeholders and then have a practical plan for communicating clear messages to them. Disseminate whatever facts you have as and when they become known. And if there are unknowns in there, information voids we have, then be honest about those and say, we don't know at this time, and let them know when we are going to get to some actionable data. Step 3 of the Deloitte's approach is you've got to continually assess and review the crisis situation. As we know, COVID-19 was a continuously evolving crisis. Information is changing by the minute almost. This is not unique to COVID-19. If you look at any of the crises that we've had to face, things like Grenfell Tower, terror attacks, natural disasters, the rate at which information changes is vast. So we have to be continually assessing and reviewing what we know. We might have formulated a plan. The plan may no longer be valid, and one of the key elements of leading in a crisis is knowing when to ditch the plan. Step 4 in the Deloitte's recommendation is about intelligence gathering. Sounds awfully militaristic, but it's you're driving towards what we call actionable intelligence. It's things you can do something about and act upon. So crisis being full of uncertainty means that getting actionable intelligence can be quite tricky. So you have to cast your net for sources of information as wide as possible. That could be using news media, it could be using law enforcement, it could be using personal contact. Whatever you need in terms of quality information to inform what you're going to do next, what your plan's going to be. Remember, we're trying to drive towards something we can do something about. We can only do that based on information. The 5th element of the Deloitte's approach is we have to manage not just the crisis event, but the crisis life cycle. Every crisis has an aftermath that has to be dealt with. If you think back to Grenfell Tower, the immediate crisis was we had a burning building. The secondary crisis was once that was under control, where were we going to house all of those displaced people that now had nowhere to live? And the third or tertiary crisis was the hunt to see how we could possibly let that happen again and the reputational damage that subsequently ensued. So we need to think of the crisis not just in terms of the immediate event, but its entire life cycle. A crisis severely tests an organisation's leadership, decision-making and strategic thinking. It's up to the board to rise to this challenge. So in summary, really dealing with a crisis involves trying to get some of the basics right. This often involves using what we used to call soft skills. The truth is they're anything but soft. These are things like honesty, integrity, empathy, and courage. It takes guts to deal with a crisis. So when you're communicating about the crisis, remember the 3 E's. These are emotional intelligence, empathy, and ethics. The empathy is important because that needs to align with the public mood. So as leaders of our businesses, our companies, and our organisations, we have to lead from the top using those skills and perhaps the steps that we talked about earlier in order to try and steer the company back on course and hopefully to a brighter future.